Hey everybody, Weedio here. Today I want to go over a few things about abiotic and biotic factors that can affect your plants. So let's get started. So there's many different things that can affect your plants. Like I said, there's abiotic and biotic factors. So abiotic are factors that are non-spreading, so like a drought. So if one plant in your garden is dry or one area is dry, that's not going to spread to a different area as long as it remains watered. But biotic factors can spread, so like a disease can spread to different plants in your garden. So today we'll be looking at just these juniper bushes to kind of see um, whether what's happened to like this one here right in front of us, whether it's a biotic or an abiotic factor. So one thing we can do to rule out whether this is a abiotic factor is whether it's uniform. As you can see, it's not very uniform. This one here is dying. It's kind of the top part's dying, but as you can see, the rest are looking pretty good and normal. And then down here, I dug one up to look at it. But as you can see, before I dug it up, it was pretty sad. Most of the needles were dry and crunchy, and so were the stems, and they were very brittle. And so you can see this is not very uniform. So usually abiotic problems are very uniform. So if you have a drought, didn't have enough water, then all of them would be affected, and not just a few. So if you can rule out whether it's a abiotic factor, that will greatly help reduce what you need to look for. So once you figure out that it's not an abiotic factor, then you need to begin investigating the plant and whether you can see whether there's a biotic factor that's affecting it. So there's different things that can affect plants. So first you need to think about insects. So you need to look for signs of insects. You also need to look for signs of different diseases such as fungal or bacterial diseases that can affect your plants. So I began searching the plants. I began looking through them, combing them over. I grabbed a white paper towel and began shaking the branches over the paper towel to see if I could collect any bugs. And so as I was doing that, as I was looking them over, I discovered spider mites. So that was one potential cause that I discovered as I was looking throughout, these different plants. As I looked them over, and as I looked for these spider mites, I just found a few. There wasn't very many, and because I wasn't finding large signs of these spider mites, it reduced the possibility that's what was greatly affecting it. So then I dug up this plant here. I dug it out of the ground and began looking at it. It was pretty much dead. And so I began pulling it apart, dissecting to look at it, and I cut it in half away from the stem, and I began digging into the bark. And then that's when I discovered the second insect, which was this weevil larva that was just kind of right here inside the bark. And so I began looking the plant over, looking for more, but I didn't really find a lot. So, like I said before, I didn't really find a lot of spider mites, but I found a few, and I didn't really find a lot of weevil grubs, larvae, and because of that, it's still a possibility that these two insects could have been affecting this one here and the one down there at the end. But because I wasn't finding them in large populations, that one's, I can't say I can completely 100% rule out as a possibility of these juniper trees dying, but I can't say it's the major cause of the death of these junipers. So after feeling like the weevil or the spider mite wasn't the main cause, I began looking at the roots. And there was couple things I noticed. So that these very finer roots, there was a lot of them that seemed very rotten. So the outer part of the root was peeling away from the center part of these roots, and it was very rotten and very squishy. And the inner part, kind of the core of these roots, was no longer white. So roots are normally white looking when they're healthy, but the roots themselves wasn't. These roots weren't white. They were very brown, very squishy, and that's when I began to suspect that it was a fungal disease. So after doing a little bit of research, I realized it was Phytophthora that was most likely affecting these roots. And so this is kind of causing the roots to rot and to die back. So to wrap this video up, just gotta remember a few things. You need to look for whether it's abiotic or a biotic factor. And so if it's an abiotic factor, it's a little easy to correct. If it needs more water, you just need to start adding a little more water. If you need to add a little less, then you just need to add a little less. And then with biotic factors, you just need to look for the signs of, the different insects and the different fungal diseases and other diseases that can affect these type of bushes or any other plant that you're growing. So, if you have a problem, do some research, look for common diseases that affect these plants and begin, researching them. This is kind of a step-by-step process, just kind of slowly try to eliminate possibilities. So, today I was able to eliminate that it was most likely not a abiotic factor. It wasn't caused by underwatering. It wasn't caused by a cold, frosty day. But, once I eliminated that, I was able to start looking for those biotic factors. I found the spider mites, I found the weevil larvae, but overall, I realized that those populations weren't huge. There's very few spider mites I was finding, there's very few larvae that I was finding, and because of that, I could kind of somewhat conclude that it wasn't them that was causing this problem, because this problem was extensive to the whole plant. It was affecting the plant, greatly, and because of that, you can kind of assume that's not what was affecting it, because usually insects and stuff like that would be more localized areas, and they won't affect the plant altogether all at once. So oftentimes with insects, they'll affect maybe a more localized area. I mean, there are times where it could affect the whole plant at once, but often they start out in localized area and then will spread over the whole plant. And often with fungal diseases that affect the roots, they'll affect, sometimes only part of the plant. So if they kill maybe half the root in the ground, and those roots that are feeding, say for here, this part of the tree, then only this part of the tree will die while the rest will remain okay, because as of yet, the fungal disease hasn't affected those part of the plant. So yeah, you just have to kind of slowly limit these different processes that could be affecting these plants. Figure whether it's abiotic, whether it's biotic, whether it's insects, a fungal disease and stuff like that. You just gotta figure out whether it's one thing or the other. And oftentimes these problems are compounded by one or more. So if you're overwatering, that could cause the plants to develop a fungal disease much faster. If it's too hot, that will allow the insects to affect the plants even more. So if your plant's not healthy in the first place, they're much more likely to get these diseases. And so you just got to make sure that your plants are as healthy as possible. And oftentimes, there's multiple things affecting the plants all at once. So here, the weevils and the spider mites could be contributing to the death of these plants because they are affecting the plants, but then they're also being affected by the fungal disease as well. So there can be multiple things happening all at once that can be affecting your plants, and that is important to remember. But you just need to slowly try to eliminate what could be affecting your plants, whether it's abiotic, such as not getting enough water, whether it's biotic, whether it's insects or fungal disease, and you just need to kind of eliminate things off your list. And the most important thing to do is do research. If you're not sure, begin researching, whether looking, just type in what's wrong with my juniper bush and begin researching, begin eliminating possibilities that are not possible for your plants, and begin putting together an idea for what's happening. And by doing so, you'll potentially be able to help your plants before they die. And it's important to inspect your plants regularly, because diseases can come on pretty quick. One day they look good, and a few days later, a week later, they are not looking good. So it's important to look at your plants often, and if something looks wrong, do some research, try to figure it out. So take care.